Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Claudia. So today what I'm going to be doing is, this is going to be more on the lifestyle part of my channel. So I'm going to be talking to you about a really important topic that I feel a lot of people maybe don't understand, or they just never really put a lot of thought into this topic. And it's a term that I've been seeing more and more lately, especially after 9/11 and the COVID and everything else. I think a lot of us have fallen into this role, and I wanted to just come out here and talk about it. And it's compassion fatigue. It's something that a lot of people think, well, what is compassion fatigue? The first time I heard that, I thought, does that mean you don't care or you don't want to care about people? I wasn't really sure what that meant. And the more I've looked into this topic about compassion fatigue, it really has to do with not just healthcare workers. And I think we think, okay, this is probably more related to a healthcare worker, but it's not. It's anyone who cares for someone. So if you're someone who's caring for a disabled child, or if you're caring for your children, they don't have to be disabled, or maybe you're taking care of your parents, friend, you're somebody who's at work, who's taking care of others at work. I mean, there are so many ways that you can be affected by compassion fatigue. And I wanted to just talk to you about it and let you know that it is a real thing that's happening to a lot of people. And what ends up happening is that some people they stop caring. And it doesn't mean that they don't care. They're just tired of caring, right? So I want to share with you a personal story of mine that I think might help you understand it more, what it means if you're still struggling to think, well, I still don't understand what compassion fatigue means. It's a hard concept to grasp, but I wanted to share a really personal story, which is what I've been doing a lot more lately on this channel, is just sharing a little bit about me and giving you guys kind of behind the curtains of who I am. But, I grew up, I have a sister who is actually the oldest, and she has autism. And at a very young age, my parents realized that she had autism. I was in line. It was my sister. I have a brother, another brother than me, then a younger brother. So there's 5 of us in the family. And by the time I was the 4th child, my mom had her hands full and my parents had their hands full. But I remember at a young age when I was born, I remember having, my sister being around, and she had a lot of needs. And sometimes she would get in a rage. She'd get really upset. She couldn't verbalize what she wanted, and she would get very frustrated. She would yell. Sometimes she would throw things at us, and she would, at times she would grab me by my hair and throw me across the room. But that's the way she communicated and acted out. My parents worked really hard with a lot of, family services to get her the help that she needed. But I remember at a really young age, a lot of stuff was put on me. My parents had to work, and when they were home, they were so busy cooking and cleaning and trying to take care of all 5 of us that not sometimes, but most of the time, a lot of the responsibilities of my sister will fall on me. My sister's 6 years older than me, and I can remember since the day I can remember my sister since I was a little girl, I used to help care for her. I would help her in the bath, if she needed a bath. I would help dress her. I would sleep with her. She wouldn't go to bed unless I was there. If she wanted to eat dinner or breakfast, I had to be there. She wanted me by her side all the time. But as you can imagine, as you start getting older and you start having friends and you start getting invited to activities at school, or you want to join an extracurricular activity, all of those things became very, very challenging because my parents needed me at home with her because they couldn't do it all. And yeah, you could look at it and say, well, shame on your parents. Yeah, they did the best that they could. I really, truly do believe that my parents did what they could. They had a lot of us, 5 of us. They worked very hard, and they had low income, and they did what they could to take care of us. And, the culture that I come from is we all help, we all pitch in, and we take care of our siblings. We help with duties at home, and I just did everything I could. But I remember about, when she got a little bit older and I started getting older, I started to want to go out with friends. My parents got to a point where they couldn't care for my sister anymore because it was just getting so difficult as she got older, and we were all getting older as well, that my parents sought out help with the state and said, hey, what can we do? We need help. She's getting aggressive. She's angry. It was really hard for my parents. My parents were looking for some type of assistance, like therapy or something that could help her. And what we ended up finding out was, we lived in Indiana, and there was a mental health facility in Indianapolis. So it was about 3 hours away from where we lived. And we went there one day to get a screening and have her see some psychiatrists to see what we can do. And what they came up with was that she needed to stay there and that they wanted to admit her, but more of a long-term plan where she would live there. And I remember at first I thought, well, that's a little weird that she's going to live so far away. But there was a part of me that felt relieved, right? That I didn't have to carry all this burden and all this work because I was exhausted as a child. And I remember we went with these physicians and these clinicians for a while, and finally the day came where we had to drop her off. And I remember this day like it happened yesterday, even though it's been so long ago. It had a profound effect on me. And I feel like I carried this with me my entire life. We dropped her off. And as we're leaving, keep in mind, here's my sister who's like 13 years old. All she's ever known is us. She's never known anybody else. And, we're her home. Even though it wasn't the best environment for all of us, this was home. We take her to this foreign big facility with all these strangers. We leave her there. And I remember the day we dropped her off, she cried. She tried to grab onto my parents' legs. And it was one of the most painful things that I had ever seen. And I remember I left. I was crying because my mom was crying. My dad was crying. We were all crying. And I remember I didn't know how to feel. I was really torn because I was so sad that my sister had to go through this. But at the same time, I was relieved. I felt this sense of relief that I didn't have to carry this anymore, that I can breathe. I felt like I was suffocating. And I'm not trying to be dramatic. I really am not, but it felt suffocating. And I remember over the next few months, the same thing would happen. We would go visit her. She'd come home for a couple days. We would take her back. She would scream. And it was just so painful for my parents. But I felt like I was suffering with compassion fatigue at such a young age because I wanted just to be a kid. I wanted to have sleepovers. I wanted to go to my friend's house. I wanted to just do things that normal kids do at 7 and 8 years old. That there was a part of me that, as horrible as this sounds, I was just done. I was relieved that she was gone. I'm not proud of this, but I think I was exhausted. I was tired of caring. Didn't mean that I didn't care. I was just tired. And I think a lot of us who are in these roles where we're taking care of people with special needs or our own children. I mean, how many of us have been exhausted after a long day, whether you're an at-home mom and you're trying to clean and cook and get things ready and homework and picking up and extracurricular activities. And then those of us that have to go out and work as well. I mean, then you add work on top of that. I mean, it's exhausting sometimes that, sometimes I look at my past from everything I've been through as a child to an adult, and there have been times where I've had to say no. And, people ask me all the time, well, what do you do if you might be somebody who's suffering with compassion fatigue? And the biggest thing that I always tell people is you have to put yourself first. Sometimes you have to learn to say no. No to your boss, no to your coworkers. Sometimes you have to say no to your own children or your own partners or your family members. There have been times in my life where the kids want something or they want to do something, or they're asking me to do something that I know they could do for themselves. And sometimes as mom and dad, we think we can just do it ourselves. It'd be much easier than them messing it up or taking longer. But I've learned to say no, and I'm comfortable with the word no. I really work hard to keep a balance between, work and family and myself. And as selfish as this sounds, I come first. If I'm not happy, healthy, and whole, then I can't be productive with anybody else. So I really have worked hard to say no and find hobbies and things that I really enjoy. So lately I've been working out a lot. I work out 6 days a week. You might not be able to tell, but I do work out. I exercise, I lift. I recently came across a breathing technique called Wim Hof. It's just an amazing way to just unwind. It's like a meditation breathing exercise that I have loved, since I started this about a year ago. I'm just in love with this whole Wim Hof. I mean, you'll have to look it up, but, I find things that I enjoy. And sometimes it's playing with my dog, my dog Dexter. I have a dog. He's a golden doodle, an Irish golden doodle named Dexter. And yes, he was named after the serial killer on Netflix, which at the time the kids were teenagers and they named him. And I really didn't know about the show, but I figured, hey, he's at least a good serial killer, I guess. But that sounded bad, but no. So yes, he was named after that. But, I have a dog, and one of the things that my husband and I did was we had him certified. He's got a national certification, and he goes out and does pet therapy. We visit nursing homes, we visit mental health centers, and I believe he's going to start visiting a school soon. So we do things like that help give back, right? Volunteering also, feels good. So I feel like, if you're someone who's exhausted and you're just, maybe you feel like you're doing too much, or maybe you feel bad that you want an alone moment, or you don't want to take your kids with you on a walk, or you want to go out to dinner with your husband or your partner or your friend, and you're like, the kids want to come, but I really don't want to take them. I'd say no, right? We taught the kids at a really young age that it was so important to have balance and to take care of ourselves. So when we would go out to places, we would tell them, sorry, you guys aren't coming. And they would get mad. We have 4 kids, blended family. And they'd say, well, why can't we go? I want to go. And I'd say, because I need my alone time. Mom and dad need to have alone time. And you see this version of us, we're happy, we're able to care for you, and we're nice to you. Well, if you want us to be nice to you, let us go. So that's the way we would get out of it. And you know what? They were taught at a young age that it's important to take care of yourself and your relationships and your family relationships. So they know that, hey, if we go somewhere, they don't take it personal. They used to take it personal in the beginning until we explained to them that this is just normal living and this is healthy living. So I hope that I was able to shed a little light about compassion fatigue. And again, compassion fatigue doesn't mean that you don't care. Compassion fatigue is more on the spectrum of you're tired of caring because you've cared so much. And sometimes if you're at that point in your life where you're caring so much that it's exhausting you, then you do have to make some changes. It doesn't mean that you just completely disregard whatever it is and you just walk away. No, but there are some things you could do to modify that. So I just wanted to shed light on compassion fatigue and what that means, and my personal story on that, so that if there's anybody out there who's maybe struggling with this, you're not alone. And keep in mind, there are things you can do. And for me, the first thing that you can do is take care of yourself first. And, as always, thank you guys so much for visiting my channel, and I hope to see you again.